One of the most common questions I get on this channel is, what is my FIDE rating? I share a lot about my growth in online chess, but I rarely ever talk about how I'm going in my over-the-board tournaments. The truth is, I kind of just play over-the-board tournaments for fun. I feel like not everything needs to be filmed and made into a YouTube video. For the longest time, I've kind of just kept it all to myself. But I thought it would be a cool idea to take you guys along with me for this over-the-board tournament and show you exactly how my games went. So in today's video, we'll be going through all of the games that I played in my most recent tournament, so you guys can see exactly how I played. Before we do start today's video though, there are a couple of things that I want to mention. First things first, I won't put anyone's names in this video. I will link the tournament in the description below if you guys really want to validate it, but I don't want to put anyone's full names in this YouTube video because I really haven't got their permission, and I think it's kind of a weird thing to do. When you play a chess tournament, you play kids and you also play amateur players that probably don't want to be in a YouTube video, so I feel like it's best if I just don't put them in. The second thing to note is that FIDE ratings are a little bit different in Australia as compared to America or Europe. Because Australia is a big island with only around 20-something million people completely isolated from the rest of the world, our FIDE ratings are much different to Europe and America. I think a general rule of thumb is that everyone that you see in this video, including myself, is probably 1 to 200 ELO lower rated than they would be if they played elsewhere. This is because if you play in Australia, you only really verse people that play in Australia and you don't have the opportunity to grab ELO from players of other countries. I would even go as far as to say if you live in South Australia, your rating is a little bit lower rated than if you lived in Victoria. Those are two Australian states, and if you had to drive from where I live to Victoria, it would take around 10 hours. So because of the geography of our country, all of the ratings that you see in this video are going to be a little bit lower than what you might expect. Third thing I wanted to mention is that if you guys like this video and want to see more, definitely let me know in the comments. I didn't want to do too much for this video in terms of bringing a camera to the tournament or, doing anything crazy with the editing. I wanted to make sure you guys actually want to see videos like this before I kind of put all my eggs into one basket. So if you do like this video and you do want to see more, definitely let me know. I'll also leave a Lee Chess study in the description below if you want to go and analyze any of these games yourself. I am skipping over a couple of them because, I don't want to show games where I've unrated players or very low rated players. I feel like this video is going to be long enough as it is. So if you do want to see the games that we skipped, they are only games that I won, by the way. I will go over all of the games that I lost or drew. You can see that in the description below. Before we do get into the game though, it's very important to mention, especially in Australia where you have to travel so much for your tournaments, tournaments are very expensive, so this tournament and videos like this one would absolutely not be possible without our sponsor, ChessMind.ai. Most courses obsess over memorizing hundreds of opening lines, but ChessMind is built around something different, understanding positions and not just remembering moves. The goal isn't just to know theory, it's to know what to do when theory runs out. That's why the courses on ChessMind only take around an hour to complete, because the priority isn't on memorization, it's positional understanding. For just $7 per month, you can unlock over 50 courses on ChessMind, plus access to their AI coach, personalized puzzles, and training videos hosted by Chilean Grandmaster Maurizio Flores. And with the link in the description, you guys can get 20% off your purchase too. But apart from that, I hope you all enjoy the video, and let's get into the first game. So we go into the second round of the tournament where I versed roughly a 1700 FIDE rated player. And they played d4, and at the time I was not so annoyed with this, but as the tournament progresses, you'll see that I play a lot of the same opening with the black side, and it did get a little bit repetitive. So we do get d5, c4, and e6, so I did have to play the Queen's Gambit declined on multiple occasions during this tournament, but I guess that's just life. And I got off to a pretty good start, I felt. So my opponent played knight c3. We'll just get the theory out of the way. There's not too much interesting about all of this theory. e3 was played, castles, knight f3, d takes c4, bishop takes b6. Of course, you don't want to play b6 first because then they will take, and you can either, take with your pawn and you've got no scope for your bishop that you just intended to put on b7, or you'll have to trade off a bunch of pieces, which isn't really ideal. In this case anyway, you would have to put a pawn on the d5 square, again, making this bishop seem a little bit useless. So I didn't really want to go for b6 just yet. That's why my idea is usually to play d takes c4. I actually learned this from Sadistic Tushi, funnily enough. I think this is what he plays against the Queen's Gambit. But no, they took, and then I played b6. Then they played queen e2. And queen e2 is the correct move here, but my opponent didn't know it was theory, so they spent around 10 to 15 minutes on this move, and what queen e2 told me about the position is that my opponent was willing to kind of take these weird gambles to be better. Of course, when you're playing against the Queen's Gambit declined as the white side, in classical chess at least, it's very, very difficult to get a very clear-cut position, like a very clear-cut win. So I knew that my opponent was going to be looking for these kind of moves like Queen e2, where I felt that at times they may try to reinvent the wheel. And I was really, after this move of Queen e2, because he took so long to play it, I was just looking out for any time that I felt that he maybe tried to get one up over me, but left a little bit in behind, if that makes sense. I was looking for him to try and get too much out of the game when there really wasn't anything in it. And that was my ticket to kind of getting an advantage in this game, was waiting for my opponent to overextend a little bit. So I played bishop b7, and they play e4. And immediately, I am thinking, okay, how can I take this pawn? Because there is this discovery, this x-ray here, I was thinking, okay, how can I take this pawn? And I looked at the line. I knew that if takes, they would just take back, right? And if I take here, suddenly I take here, and this doesn't really work because there's a rook hanging in the corner. So I knew that the tactic was okay. The tactic was working, but it didn't work right now. I had to fix a couple of things before I could go for it. So first of all, I go for knight bd7, which immediately solves the problem of the rook hanging at the end of the line. So, we've solved one problem, but after something like rook d1, does the tactic work? Okay, we can look at it again. If takes, now if they take with their knight, sure, we're going to play takes. If they take here, we're going to play bishop takes f3, and suddenly we're actually very winning here, because after king takes, we can play either rook takes, and we're up a pawn, right? But that's not the line that's going to be played. Instead, my opponent is most likely going to play bishop takes e7, and the problem is, you might think, wait, I can capture this. Like, of course, if I take here and takes here, I'm just down a piece, but I can do this with tempo, right? And you might think this is great, but after takes and takes, they're going to get their bishop out, and my knight is trapped. That was the big problem in this position, that my knight was trapped. But I saw something in this position. I was like, wait a minute, if he was castled, this knight capture would have come with a check. So the moment he castles, this line suddenly works, because I take, you're forced to take back, and then I can take, because I've got the extra tempo. So I was waiting on that. So after rook d1, I played rook a c8. I thought that, maybe c5 I want to play at some stage. Apparently a3, just playing it very slow, is a good idea for black. But my opponent didn't find that and instead castled. And now the line works. So I play knight takes. You can play knight takes. I can play bishop takes. They play queen takes, but we can kind of go through the line anyway. If bishop takes, I go here, here, and takes with check. And now importantly, you can't escape with your bishop, and I'm just up a pawn. So this is a -2 position. Not only am I up the pawn, but I also have a very strong bishop. I've got the pawn break, you've got an isolated pawn, I've got a knight that's going to get active very quickly, and I thought this position was very good. So in the game, I play takes, they take with their queen, I take the bishop. You're actually supposed to play d5 here and try to crack open the position. The rook's on the same file as the queen. My opponent doesn't do that. They take, and play queen b7, which is a natural continuation. But now the position is -0.8 for black. So I play a5, which is the correct move. This is held. I just need to make sure that my a pawn is safe. So I play a5. And now they play d5, which is the top engine move. Trying to crack open the position, but it does allow me to get my knight to a very good square. The one thing that I make a mistake in just a few moves. I probably should have taken here, but I wanted to tempo the bishop first. I like the idea that my queen also defends this c7 square. So they defend their bishop, and now I take on d5, getting rid of what I think is the weakness in the position. This pawn is getting undermined. I may as well take it. They take with the rook, and I make the wrong move here. I thought that rook cd8 was fine, because I thought after this, I'm going to pin the rook. But I missed rook takes c5. And now my queen is hanging, and if I take, the rook boomerangs back around. So this is what I missed in this game. Realistically, I should have followed my own principle of if you've got two moves that look the same, you should play the more principled one. So I should have played rook f, e8, or rook... I think this move also just works fine. And even though it is zeros, you're still up the pawn, right? You're not losing the pawn. So in this case, after g3, I do just have to kind of move my queen. So I played queen f6. There's no way to stay defending this pawn. And I was very, very annoyed in this game. I was so upset that I had thrown my advantage away. So they take the pawn, I go ahead and take. And now I'm immediately thinking, and this is probably very immature of me, to try and figure out a way to win this position in what is just a dead drawn game. I thought, I have the imbalance of the knight versus the bishop. There are maybe light squared weaknesses. So I'm like trying to like dance my way around the position. I played knight g4, trying to get my knight up into the position. Then I find knight takes h2, which is a very, very nice move, because if you take, I'm going to play check and pick up the rook. So this was my idea here. But my opponent finds this very good move, rook d6. I should have played something like this, just getting out of the way. The problem is, in a lot of these positions, there might be some kind of queen sack. If you take with the rook, that is, rook d8 check, and the rook is pinned. So you do have to watch out for that. But in this case, of course, you can just take with the queen, and after this, you can take with the rook, and there should be a draw after the king takes. Actually, no, not after the king takes. You need to play rook d8 check first, trade off the pieces, and then take. Otherwise, you hang the f2 pawn. But I did not play queen f5 in this position. Instead, I played this check, which is absolutely fine. But then I thought, okay, I can just keep checking, right? I can just keep checking. You need to play queen f5 in this position. It's the only move. Because if knight e1 check, he's attacking this. And he's threatening this. Right? Like, I can't save my knight. If I go here, my queen is under attack. If I, play queen f5, suddenly he can just take. He can also play rook d8. Takes is probably the most trivial one, where I don't have anything now. I don't have anything. I have to stay defending this f7 square. And I didn't really have a way, because my plan was, after I checked here, I was like, I'm going to check here, and then I'm going to play queen a1. But I forgot the two ideas combined, where they can just play queen takes. And I allowed this to happen in the end, because I was like, I could play queen f5 here. I knew I could play queen f5, and after this, I could like try and get rook g8 check or rook e8 check, and I could try for a win. But I just felt like the win was too obvious if this happened, and, even if my opponent doesn't find the best way of dealing with it, then I'm still going to be losing. There's just no winning chances for me in this kind of position. So after king f1, I was like, okay, I'm going to play queen a1. Let's see if he can actually find this queen sack. My opponent did, and then I resigned. So I lost in round 2, a very, very annoying loss, a game that I don't think I should be losing at all. I think, had I just been a little bit more mature and after I did eventually kind of blunder my advantage, I should have just gone for the draw. I didn't. I was being stubborn about it, and I ended up getting punished as a direct result of that. So we're on 1 out of 2 points. So time for the comeback. We'll skip the third round. Third round was against a 1500 rated player, which I did win. I'll link the Lead Chess study in the description below. But we can go into round 4, where I versed a 1600 with the black pieces. You guys can guess exactly what opening was played. It's d4. I get another d4. Great. Round 2. Round 4, I've had 2 games with the black pieces, both against d4. It's whatever. I play g5. And we get another Queen's Gambit. So we've got another Queen's Gambit in this tournament already, just at round 4. And I'm basically just going to play the same opening that I played before, but this time we get a Catalan. During this game, I was very, very just annoyed in general that I had to play another Queen's Gambit declined. So I actually played this game relatively quickly without thinking about a bunch of my moves. Of course, you can get away with kind of playing quickly against the Queen's Gambit, because the setup that you go for is generally the same in the first 10 moves. I play c6, my opponent plays queen c2, stopping d takes c4, which can actually be really annoying if you are playing the Catalan and black knows what they're doing, playing d takes c4. But now I go for b6, and this is what I like doing against the Catalan. I like making some kind of use of my bishop. Bishop b7, bishop a6 can sometimes be very useful ideas. My opponent plays knight c3, and then I play bishop b7. And, it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, I don't really have any major prospects in this position, but do you? Does white? How is white breaking through? And the only way for white to break through is to give me something, right? They're going to give me something. So they take in the center, which I immediately thought wasn't so great. You don't really want to take with this because you've just got this weakness here. Even though it does open up the right file, it just does create some weaknesses along the c file that you don't really want to deal with. So I played c takes, even though it does block the bishop in. You can get the bishop out later. It's not a big deal. So they played bishop g5,
And then I go ahead and play, apparently, just playing something simple, a6, h6 is going to be good here. I went ahead and played knight c6, which is also a good move. And yeah, my opponent just follows up with some basic moves, kind of just getting all the easy moves out of the way, rook fe1, and I play rook c8. These are just the natural moves that you would play if you were playing this position. There is not too much thought involved. I don't really have a proper plan yet because I just need to get my pieces out. And my opponent plays queen a5, which this is kind of the point where I was like, okay, something doesn't look right here. So obviously they're looking at a7, so I can't really move my knight, which was, I think moving the knight in these kind of positions, it's a very tempting idea because there is the c2 pawn. Knight e4 is the move that the engine wants you to go for, because if you go take, you can take on c3, which is a little bit complex. If the bishop takes here, I'm going to take here, and I'm looking at this whilst also looking at this. If you play b3, I can play rook f takes, and now you've got double pawns on this file. So a little bit of a complex line that I didn't see. And, knight e4 is not a move I typically go for against the Catalan. Maybe if this was the Queen's Gambit, I would have gone for it. In fact, I do have a game in this tournament where I go for an idea like this. But I ended up just playing h6. I'm like, okay, where is your bishop going to go? Do you really want to trade and, let me have the dark square bishop? I don't know. They take, I take, and I'm feeling good about this position. I really like actually having this trade on the board, even though, with the Catalan, the dark squared bishop is the less important bishop. It's not so good as compared to the light squared bishop. I do like having it still. I don't think it's ever a bad piece, especially with the black pieces. So my opponent brings a rook to the d file, which I also thought was weird. I thought that it made more sense to bring it to the e file. I also thought, you're gonna play like e3, right? Unless your plan is to play e4, which is just long term, seems like a bad idea, gives you that d4 weakness. There's not really a reason to play it. So it kind of gave away their plan in a way. Rook e1 is that they're gonna play e4. You wouldn't play rook d1 without playing e4 later. So I now play queen e7. I kind of just want to connect my rooks and bring my other rook to the party. I also want to maybe play knight b4. That's kind of an idea as well. Maybe queen b4 also. But then my opponent strikes with e4. The best way to go about this is takes, and then playing queen b4. And I'm very familiar with these kind of structures. You actually don't mind this too much. This is not a bad structure. In a lot of ways, it actually helps you get your king active in the endgame. So I'm definitely, no stranger to this kind of structure. I do it all the time. But I wasn't exactly sure how it made a difference, because I went for the same plan anyway with queen b4. I just didn't allow all of this, trades in the center. And the engine thinks that there's a difference. I don't really see it. But I play takes, and then they play a3. And my whole idea here was to play d takes e4. The engine thinks that you're better with knight c2. After this, now you can play this. So again, I find the right idea. I just don't throw in that one extra move. And then obviously, if they take like this, you're defending this. So you can take here now, rook takes, and the engine, I don't even know, to be honest. Like, you tell me how this is any different. I end up just going for d takes c4 straight away. Just hitting the knight. If they take here, this feels a lot better for me. I'm hitting the bishop, this is surely just better because my bishop defends. So they have to do something. They play knight takes e4, and then I play knight c2. No, I don't play knight c2. I take first, because I thought, okay, in an endgame like this, and this is maybe my biggest strength in chess. In an endgame like this, you've got to always consider what will the endgame be like if you trade down to it right now. So I'm thinking, okay, if I love making an imbalance. Making imbalances makes it really easy to win as opposed to getting draws. But I think, okay, if I take here and you take here, you've got the light square bishop, sure, but all of my pawns, or most of my pawns, are on the dark squares. I've got an open file, I've got an active rook, and I've got a bishop of the opposite color. So I'm going to have really good winning chances, or at least chances to get winning chances, because there are so many imbalances on the board, and because the piece set favors my pieces. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns of yours on the dark squares, and I've got the dark squared bishop, right? So the game is going to be played on the dark squares, and you don't have the bishop to play that endgame. That was my idea with this, with trading into this. Even though the engine is saying, again, you should play knight c2 first, I thought that taking on e4 was also a very viable plan, and then I end up going with knight d5. I don't really want you to get rid of this pawn. For example, if I play here, I thought that maybe this was an idea for white, and I didn't really like it, so I thought, you know what, let's just centralize the knight and keep the game going. My opponent plays rook e2, and then I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stack my rooks up. What are you going to do about it? I wasn't worried about this at all. I was like, okay, if you're gonna play that, for example, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here. I thought that, okay, sure, you can go here, but then I'm gonna go rook c2, and if you take, I'm actually defending all of the squares that you would be able to attack this pawn on. Like, you would have to come all the way down and go to d7. So I thought that this was favorable, even though my pawn structure is a little bit weird. I thought that this was favorable as well. My opponent ends up going for knight g4 straight away, but again, I've stated that I'm very comfortable actually taking in the center here, so I'm not worried about it at all. And I end up playing rook c2, just going after the rook, and I thought, maybe it's not winning, maybe there's nothing in this, but it's actually, if you don't play the correct move, you can see the engine evaluations here. If you don't find rook takes c2 or king f1 or rook ed2, it snowballs into a very decent position for black if you don't find a couple of moves. My opponent plays rook takes c2, rook takes c2, and bishop takes d5, and then I take, and then they jump their knight back. And you can see already, if you miss one move, you've got to play b4 here. Otherwise, it just snowballs into a very decent position for black, and my opponent doesn't find it. They play knight takes d5. You're supposed to play bishop d8 here, but I play rook b3, again kind of blundering the game back, but you've got to play very, very carefully. They play takes, and then they find this idea of pushing the pawn, which I had calculated, because I thought if king f8, the idea should be to push the pawn all the way down the board, but once I get to d8, you've got to find a4. That's it. I guess I didn't see that. I still don't really understand why a4 is such a good move here, or such a saving move, but I calculated that when we got to this position, it would just be completely winning for black, because it's extremely difficult to stop my pawns. The rook is tied to the pawn. I'm going to grab it if you're not careful. And this endgame just looked really good for me, and that's what I thought from a distance at least. My opponent didn't really understand it. I took on a3, and then I started pushing some pawns up the board, and by the time that they kind of recouped and regathered themselves, it was too late, and my opponent resigned on move 39. They're just not going to be able to stop this b pawn from promoting, and it's going to be a very easy win here. So that was a game against a 1600 FIDE rated player. A decent game. I guess it's kind of difficult for me, and maybe I just need to be more patient in these games, or maybe learn something a little bit more forcing against d4, against the Catalan and the Queen's Gambit. You're never really going to get these games with fireworks. It's going to be a game of wits, a battle of wits in a way, when you verse these openings so often. And I guess just my knowledge of the endgame and trading into one that I thought was favorable to me did end up winning me this game. But we do go into round 5 on 3 out of 4 versing an 1800 rated player. I get the white pieces. This is a player that I've versed a couple of times. We have a pretty balanced win rate against each other. I'll put all of the names of the players on screen. I won't include their last names because I feel like that's kind of lame. I don't want to be doxing anyone without their permission. But we get this game against, the highest rated player I've versed so far, and we play d4 and knight f6. What's funny is that I prepped the Dutch because I thought they would play the Dutch. I prepped it for like 3 hours before this game, and then they just didn't play it. I was like, oh, that's great. So, I have a good repertoire against knight f6 anyway. They play the Nimzo, and I play the anti-Nimzo with knight f3, just trying to get into my Catalan line, and then we do get into a Catalan. And this is what I was saying before, it's actually very difficult to play against d takes c. I know that the theory should be bishop g2, I know that after bishop b4, you should be playing bishop d2. I know that there are lines where they can go back. I actually learned in one of my lessons with Grandmaster Maurizio Flores that a3 here is kind of what black wants. They want you to make that commitment because they don't really want to do anything with this bishop here. This bishop doesn't help their position at all. That's the whole reason that they play a4, is to kind of put the ball back into your court. They want you to take, or they want you to play a3, then they can do something. It'll still be on their terms. For example, if you play a3, it's on their terms. If you play this, actually, they've just got an open rook, and they've got these very advanced pawns that could be a problem later on, and it's kind of on their terms again. So you just don't want to do anything about it. So I play castles, and it's like, okay, what is your bishop doing here? Are you going to move eventually? Eventually I'm going to deal with it. When the time is right, I'm just going to choose my more important moves first. So castles, they castled as well, and then I went queen c2, which is the right idea, just going after this pawn. We're always defending this pawn as well, and when we do capture, we're also going to be defending this d4 pawn. So my opponent then plays bishop takes d2, and I play b takes d2, which is the correct move, and then they play b5. And I know what you're supposed to do in these positions. I know the general idea. And I know it's a4, and after c6, I didn't know it was b3. I think that's just the gap in my theoretical knowledge. I didn't know you were supposed to play b3, and I took on b5. I thought that the move order didn't matter because I played takes, and then b3. You're supposed to play b3 straight away because if c takes b3 now you can play knight takes b3, and the knight kind of gets in. And, you know, not to mention that this c pawn is always going to be weak. You can take here next. You know, if they try to play a6, you're going to play knight e5, but I'm pretty sure you could probably also play this, right? C takes b5 and then knight e5, and you've got good ideas here. Not to mention this a5 pawn is very weak too. So that's kind of the idea of the Catalan. If they do take, you want to isolate these pawns on the queen side and then win them later. But the way that I did it, a takes, and b3, after takes and takes, it's a little bit different now because now they've got the time to play bishop b7, right? And even though you do have knight c5 or something, you know, bishop c6, and you don't really have the same firepower that you once did. So I played knight takes b3. Fortunately for me, they did not play bishop b7. They played knight b7, which I immediately kind of sensed was an issue. I didn't find knight e5, which is very surprising that I didn't find this at the board. I just completely missed it. It's just an obviously good move, right? The knight gets out of the way of the bishop and the bishop hits the rook. You know, if they play something like this, now knight c5, you know, you've got knight c7 check is coming. You know, here, we're just swarming the position for black, right? So it was a very obvious move that I didn't see. I saw queen c6 though, which was the other idea of the position. You know, we're hitting the rook and we're hitting the pawn. So I thought that this was a decent try as well. After knight b6, of course, you can just take this. I thought I would go one step further. I thought this was annoying with bishop d7 and having to play queen d3, and then maybe a4 comes, and then this. I thought this was just an annoying position. Turns out it's not so bad. So what I wanted to do before taking the pawn was play knight c5 because I didn't see a real issue with it. You know, just stopping this bishop from ever getting active. What I missed in this position is that after b4, and I think my move was queen here, I assumed that we would be able to take here. I thought that knight d5, I would be able to have e5. But I missed that, I think it's this move with knight c3 that I missed, you know, and you just don't win these pawns. These pawns just stay under black's control. So I did miss that. And you know, my opponent, again, kind of lets me off the hook and doesn't play b4. I think my opponent thought that if b4, I had knight e5, and he thought that it became really difficult for me to actually do anything. You know, if takes here, I'm going to take here. If takes here, then this rook is hanging. So we went over it together after the game and analyzed, and they said that they thought knight e5 was going to be very strong if they didn't do something about it. But apparently you just have knight df5 or knight fd5. And we also looked at over this position, and we kind of just assumed that it was some kind of zugzwang, right? That's, okay, you know, black's position is great, but what do they do after this? You know, what is their plan after this? The bishop can't move, the rooks can't really do anything. Like, there's not much to actually be achieving for black after this, and apparently there just is. Like, if we play e3, you know, you can play rook a7. You've just got to find these slow, incrementally improving moves, and you'll realize that white really can't do too much either. So I guess we both missed that. They ended up playing knight d7, and I took on b5 finally, and now my position is slightly better, and I also have a pass pawn on c5. So my opponent plays knight d5, and I'm thinking, okay, they're threatening to play c4, or knight c3, sorry, but I had this really cool idea. Rook f1 or rook d1. And I had this idea I'm so proud of. Because I saw if knight c3, I saw rook takes, knight takes, rook takes check, king takes. And then I saw knight d4, hitting the knights, but also hitting the rook. And I also saw, okay, if rook d8, I have rook b1. And then I saw, okay, but if this, I also have bishop c6, and I was like, this line is like a cool trappy line. It makes sense to play. You know, you can't take because of the pin steal, and I'm going to win a piece. So that's the line that I saw in this game, and it's why I played rook d1, allowing this fork, because I didn't think it worked. Bishop a6 apparently works in this position, but my opponent played queen f6, and I was a little bit worried. I was like, okay, now this move probably works. Now knight c3 is probably something to defend against, so I did end up, you know, making another move and playing rook dc1. And then they played bishop a6. And for a second here, I actually panicked because I took here knowing that, okay, if they take here, I'm going to win the rook and I'm going to win both rooks, and I'm actually also going to get back rank checkmate. So we'll put that on the board just for anyone that doesn't see it. This is just going to be back rank checkmate. You have to block with the queen, and that's me. So they can't take what seems like a free pawn here. But what my opponent did do actually tricked both of us For like literally maybe 30 seconds after bishop b7, I was like, wait a minute, I'm losing my rook. I can't take here because he'll take with the bishop, and I can't go back anywhere because I can't go queen c3, but I just have queen e1, right? Queen e1, and you're defending because the queen and the rook see this, but you've got two defenders also. So did miss that. My opponent plays bishop c6. Then I decided, let's trade a rook and play e4. Let's try and finish this game off. So e4 is played, they drop the knight back, and then I play e5. I'm like, okay, I'm going to trade something off. I'm going to play maybe knight d4 at some stage. My opponent drops their queen back. I drop my knight into the position. They take and take. And then after knight d5, I was actually considering this move knight b5, but I did see that queen b7 and knight here didn't work because of the double check, and it's actually just going to be checkmate in a couple of moves. Right? You're just going to lose very badly here. And this is checkmate. So I was very careful not to play that move. Instead, I played c6, which is the correct move. My opponent plays h5, just kind of making some progress somewhere on the board. I play knight b5, ready to hop in here. My opponent plays rook c7, and I was actually very hesitant to play something like knight d6 because I thought after the rook comes down, and I play something like h4, I thought that they had something like c6, just kind of breaking apart my structure, but it's actually, I think I was just seeing ghosts, because you can just play this, rook c8, you can play e takes, after g takes, you can probably just start bringing your queen in, like queen e2, and start going for some things now. So I think I was seeing ghosts a little bit, and I went for queen e2 first, which is just a big mistake because of queen g5, hitting the rook and threatening knight f4 check, which I didn't really see a great way to defend against. You can play queen c4, which defends the threat and keeps some of your advantage, but I found rook c4 because I didn't see the next brilliant move that my opponent played. Rook takes c6, and you can't take because the rook was the one defending this check. So I have to kind of shuffle around. Rook a4 is the move that I have to play. Sorry, I did play h4 first. I thought that it was an improvement to drop the queen back to g6. And then I played knight d6 after, they sacrificed. And then rook takes, queen takes, defending this. My opponent played knight e7, but I actually thought in this game, hang on a second, my opponent was very low on the clock, down to just a couple of minutes, and I thought, okay, I've actually got some decent chances in this game just because my opponent's queen is very isolated in the position, and they've got back rank issues. Like, maybe I can go queen here and check, and I win a knight, right? There's some ideas left. So I play knight e4 first, just trying to make sure that I'm isolating this queen and making sure it can't come over this diagonal. I'm plus 0.5 in this position, and they play queen f5, so they play the correct move. I play queen a4, saying, okay, you can take this, but then I'm going to check, and then you're going to go here, and then I'm going to check, and then I'm going to pick up your knight. That was my idea. And that's what happened. I just went through the line without realizing it. That's exactly what happened. Queen f5, I played queen a4, they took, not realizing queen e8, and king h7, and I got a check, and that was the end of the game. My opponent resigned, and I won the game. So I did throw away this game. In all fairness, I know I don't have the clocks on the board. I don't really keep the track of the time in my games. I do write it on my score sheet, but when I put it into the Sleep Chess Study, I don't really look at it. But I was down to, maybe 5 minutes in this game. My opponent was down to just increment, so we were both down on the clock in this game, but it was nice to get a win in a game that I think I deserved to win as well, against a very high-rated player. So a very nice game there, and we can go into round 6. Now, round 6 was against someone from Malaysia, actually. They're 1800 ELO, and I'm playing with the black pieces, and this is the first and only game that I get to play against d4, which was nice, and I decide to go for the Sicilian defense. Which is a new opening that I've been kind of playing recently, over the board at least. I've usually just played the Caro-Kann, but I've swapped the Sicilian now. I play the French Sicilian and the Kann Sicilian, and really annoyingly, my opponent plays my least favorite line in the Kann Sicilian, not because I find it difficult, but because I find it extremely boring. It's just not a fun opening to play against, in my opinion. So we play against the modern variation of the Kann with bishop d3. I play queen c7, they play queen e2, already getting me out of book, by the way, because I'm like, okay, the whole idea of putting a queen on c7 is to stop them from playing e5. So, if I play knight here now, the idea, maybe they can play e5, and I'm just completely out of book, right? So I decide, okay, let's go with something else that's like just common in the Kann Sicilian with bishop c5. They play knight b3, and I should have played bishop e7. I played bishop a7 because it's kind of the thematic move that you would play in the Kann Sicilian, but in this position, bishop e7 would have been a lot better because queen g4 is just an annoying move and you have to play king f8. So this position just gets really ugly really quickly. My opponent decides to castle though, letting me off the hook a little bit, and I play knight e7 with the idea that if they play this now, I've got this, and now if they go for this, I have knight g6, and I should be better here. So I thought that this was a decent line to go for. I play knight e7, of course. My opponent plays king h1 to get out of this pin from the bishop, and now I'm like, damn, what do I play here? It's actually not so clear. So I decide, you know what, instead of committing to castling to a side that I know they're going to try and attack on, let's develop some pieces on the other side of the board. Let's play knight bc6. They play f4, of course, going to attack us. And then I played b5. Biggest mistake of the game. Because I kind of didn't anticipate, I didn't really respect these pieces, or the queen in particular, being on a slightly different square. Because usually when a4 comes, you can just play b4, right? Because the bishop can take, but you would take back with your bishop, but there's an extra queen there, which I didn't see, which is apparently fine, actually. You take like this, and then you can just castle, and now there's maybe some discovery ideas on the queen. The queen's a little bit offside. Maybe black is doing okay here. But I didn't know that. I thought, I probably don't want to be blundering this pawn, so I play b takes a, rook takes, and then I play castles. And I'm like, okay, if you start to take here, takes, rook takes, then I can play knight b4, and I've got some compensation, right? At least I've got compensation this way. So I do play castles. My opponent plays knight d2, and now I've got to come up with a game plan, right? Now I've got to figure something out. So I play f5. And I'm like, okay, let's start and just play somewhere on the other side of the board. I could have played something like a5, but then I thought, okay, f5, and they're really coming at my position here, and I didn't like this. I don't like this structure at the best of times. I want to have some kind of central control in this game, so I thought that f5 was the best way to do it, and it's a decent way of doing it. It also, gives them the option, okay, do you want to take and allow me to get my pieces active, or do you want to push and allow me to get my pieces active, right? So I've got a lot of benefit from playing f5 in a position like this. I play a5 now, trying to get my pawn out of danger, but then my opponent plays knight c4, which just attacks my pawn again, and I don't really have a great way of dealing with it. For example, if I play something like this, I thought knight takes b6, queen takes, and bishop e3. We're not really making great progress here, I thought. So I tried to figure out something, and what I figured out was kind of just a not working idea. I thought knight d4 was a decent idea. The idea was, okay, at least I get rid of one of the pieces that's attacking this pawn. At least I'm doing something here. But after takes, they have b4, which is a really annoying move. They should have gone for c3 first. It's a little bit better. But, I mean, how do you really defend against this? Like, you can't take because the rook is pinned, and you've got some serious problems here. You need to find knight d5, which is counterintuitive to me because you would think that you need to play the move that defends the pawn. You would think that's the idea that you need to go for. Apparently b5 is a good move here, and then, if you start to go back, they've got bishop a3, and things are just getting a little bit ugly here. If you go here, there's going to be knight d6, and you're losing some material somehow. Not to mention this pawn is kind of breaking through too. Knight c6 is not the correct idea to go for. Knight d5 is, because if they do take, and let's say you take back and they take with the pawn, you can play bishop a6, and this is just a target long term, which is the idea at least. Even if you take like this or something, knight c3, there's going to be a fork here, so they always need to at least be careful of that. So I didn't find knight d5, I found knight c6. Fortunately for me, my opponent didn't find b5, but found bishop d2, which is still difficult to play with. I found bishop a6, which is the correct continuation, but my opponent played knight takes a5. I played knight takes, and I decided to sacrifice the exchange. You can see where this game is going. I probably don't need to dwell on it for too long. And I thought, you know what? Sacrifice the exchange, make something weird, make them kind of think, but it didn't really work. I just, ended up not having a great time. I actually survived for a lot longer. I was like, you know what? I've gotten all this way. My opponent has 8 minutes left. Let's at least make them work for the mate. And then, king g6, there's just going to be a checkmate here. There's no way out of it. I'm boxed in by my own pawns, and I end up getting checkmated in this game. So another loss, my second loss of the tournament. Not a great start at all, but we go into round 7, and there's still winning chances, by the way. If results go my way, there are still winning chances for this tournament. It's not completely over, but not a great result against someone that has a good score so far. Round 7 was against an unrated player, so I also won't include that in today's video, but round 8 was against a 1650 rated player. And this was a really cool game, I thought, with a really cool endgame that I wanted to show. Shock, surprise, surprise, we get d4 again, d5 and c4, so we have to play another Queen's Gambit declined. Knight c3, knight f6, c takes d. So this is a little bit different at least. I was expecting a Queen's Gambit exchange variation, so at least, I prepped for this and I knew it was coming. But yeah, we end up kind of putting all of our pieces on the correct squares. I immediately thought knight ge2 was weird. Apparently it's fine according to the engine, but when I went and asked questions of my opponents after this game, they weren't really sure and couldn't really give me a reason that they played knight ge2, and I think that showed throughout the rest of the game. And we'll get to that knight later, but knight ge2 and c6, and I've got a very, very decent setup so far. So my opponent plays queen c2, which is great. They want to take my free pawn. So, if I were to just play something like this, they would take, and win a free pawn, removing the defender. Very basic tactic. So I just play h6. You could also play knight bd7, but I didn't like the idea of cutting this bishop out too early. So I just liked h6, and then my opponent jumped back. And then I was like, okay, we mentioned this in a previous game, knight e4. I'm very familiar with this plan in the Queen's Gambit, where if they take like this, you can take like this, and if they take like this, you take here, which is exactly what happens in the game. If knight g3, you get f5 supported by the bishop. And this is a very, very, at least dynamic position for the black side. I don't want to say it's good, but it's at least not drawish and doesn't lead to some symmetrical pawn structure, and not to mention we have the imbalance of the knight versus bishop. So I was very happy getting to this position, knowing that I would have decent chances of winning. My opponent castled correctly, and then I played bishop e6. You should play knight a6, which is actually a consideration of mine. Getting the knight around to d5, maybe just getting it to b4 and d5 like this would be an easy way to get the knight out. I was thinking that, but I thought that bishop e6 was a little bit more principled because I want to connect my rooks at some stage as well, and the bishop just has to move. That was my thought process at least. I did consider f3, which is the reason that the engine doesn't like bishop e6 so much, but I just thought that, I think what I was thinking, I just didn't really love it. Like, I didn't think it was that great. It just is pretty good. I don't know really what I was thinking with it, but I thought maybe it left the e3 pawn a little bit too loose. Maybe I could play something like g3, but apparently e4, and yeah, the engine just does not love taking or just playing bishop e6 for this exact reason. So luckily my opponent didn't find that. They played rook fd1, allowing me again the chance to play knight a6, but I was more intense on playing queen f7. My idea for this game, by the way, long term, was to go g4, g5, and f4. That was my kind of idea long term, so that's why I went for queen f7. I also just wanted them to not be able to play d5. This was very important to me, just making sure that they were never, ever, ever allowed to get rid of this pawn. And I wanted to freeze the pawn structure. Usually when I go and try to attack my opponent, I want to freeze the pawn structure first to make sure they don't have any counterplay. My opponent played rook ac1, which is the natural move. Knight a6 again, I could have played it, but I just opted for knight d7. I was like, okay, apparently you can actually play this now. And, it's not so bad because it gives them access to this d4 square, which I didn't see. But I was like, okay, I'm going to play knight b6. I'm going to play knight d5. I felt like this was okay. I felt like it was at least very similar to knight a6. So my opponent played b4, which I didn't really understand too much. I was like, okay, they're going to play for b5. You can play a6. You also don't have to. You can still play like this and maybe try to pin the pawn somehow with rook a c8. Extraying the queen, but I ended up just playing kind of the safe way, which is what the engine likes as well with a6, just making sure that they can't undermine this side of the board, in any meaningful way. So I played a6, they play rook d2, and I could feel like when they played rook d2, I was like, yeah, white is kind of running out of things to do here. I also was considering this, by the way. I did consider this as an option, multiple times. Of course, right now it doesn't really work because of knight takes e4, but this was an option that comes up later in the game, and I just thought it was a slow plan. It's a two-move plan that only gives a tempo to the queen, and I feel like it's very easy for a knight to reroute and just remove that bishop from its very strong position. I felt like it wasn't doing enough for how long it took to achieve. So yeah, rook d2, I felt like, okay, he's kind of running out of moves now. Engine wants you to play b5, which is just a ridiculous move. I guess b5, the idea is you're planting a bishop here very quickly, and it's not so simple to undermine. At least that's to my understanding, that's what that does. Maybe you play knight b6 and bring a knight to there instead. I'm not exactly sure. But the engine wants b5, which is just not a move I would ever consider. Instead, I played knight f6. And my idea was I want to plant a knight on d5, and I want to take and take. And that's like generally my idea. I want to take and take, finally freeze the pawn structure, and then I get g5, f4. That was my whole idea. So they play a4. I play knight d5. Takes, I get exactly what I want. Yeah, also comes with the threat of this, hitting the queen and hitting the pawn, so that is a threat too. They need to play something, and they move the queen out of the way. Again, Engine wants you to play b5, not a move I'm really looking at. I'm looking at g5 over here. I want to start making an attack. They bring their knight. I'm like, okay, let's play f4. They bring their knight again, and I play f3. And I'm really making some inroads here. I'm like, okay, if you push this, maybe I get queen here, here, and here. This looks okay. You know, the Engine wants king h1 to bring a rook over already to kind of just turtle up and defend. So I thought that this was an interesting move that created some great dynamics for at least the endgame. My opponent took, I took, and then they played queen b3. And for a second here, I was a little bit worried. You know, how am I going to defend this pawn long term? But then I was like, wow, queen f5 is a really annoying move. And I saw some really cool lines with it. After queen d1, I saw rook ac1 or rook ac8. And after rook c2, I saw this really, really cool line with queen g3 or queen g4, queen f1, and then I saw takes, rook takes, and pawn takes, and I thought this was cool, where if you take here, I check and I win the rook. This was a line that I thought was quite interesting, but he can just play queen e2, right? And, you know, you can play queen f3 all you want, but I just felt that there wasn't significant progress to be made. You know, if you take, apparently they can even take here. If check, yeah, there's the rook hanging over here. So maybe you've got to play like rook a8 here, but then takes, this rook can check, and you know, I don't know. I just thought that there wasn't enough progress for me to be making in this kind of position. So eventually I kind of opted out of this line. I did go down it though. I took, and then I played rook c8 because I was like, okay, if he wants to give me the open file and take here, which I think does happen. Oh no, he plays c5 first, and I play b6, of course. You know, if you take, I'm going to get mate. But after takes and takes, again, if you take, the queen just defends here, actually. But in this position, and after g takes f and e takes, I thought that I was winning. I thought that I had enough of a, you know, clutch on this position, this endgame, for it to be completely winning. Of course, the engine sees h3, which is just miraculously holding for white, which I was so annoyed about. But I think h3 is a difficult move to kind of see, especially when you're at the end of the game. You don't have so much time left, and my opponent ended up playing the wrong move in king h1. So I thought that, you know, I just must have some kind of win here. Eventually, I go for king f7, thinking that I can just make any small improvement to the position. I was also thinking this, but then I thought, doesn't he just have maybe even this? Oh no, this I thought was not winning, actually. I thought that this endgame looked good for me. But I thought queen c4, he did have some just drawing chances, maybe just moving his queen around, queen d1. Even if I take something, he's going to take something back. If I jump up here, he's not going to take my queen. He's maybe going to play queen g1. And even though it looks okay, I just didn't see a way to break through, and I thought that my king would be checked if it tried to enter the game. So I didn't really get anything out of this line either, but I played king f7. Apparently the only way, again, is to play h3. My opponent doesn't find that. They play queen b1. And now I can just stop bringing my king to the game. And the idea is I'm going to eventually come through here. I'm going to plant my queen on a very specific square to threaten checkmate and make the queen be defensive. And then I'm going to bring my king up through this way and somehow win the game. Maybe I'll force a queen trade, and then my king activity is much better. So after queen d1, I play queen h3, threatening checkmate, threatening the pawn. They have to come back to a defensive position. I didn't want to go king f5 yet because I thought they could check. And I thought also the pawn runs. And I thought, yeah, this is like fine, this is winning, but it's just complicating it when there's a much more forcing way to do it. So I just play h5. And I'm like, sure, what are you going to do? You know, if, actually, sorry, king here, I thought that there were checks. But apparently you can just kind of get out, check, you know, here. And this is going to be fine for you as well. But, you know, I thought that h5 was just annoying. The queen can't move. If you do anything like this, I'm going to play takes. You're going to play takes. And, you know, maybe I'll play h4 next, just continuing to waste moves. And eventually you're going to run out of moves. You're going to have to give me a pawn. You're going to have to try and trade queens somehow. I don't know. You're going to give up mate. Which is how the game ended. I played h4 and my opponent resigned. So a nice win here against a 1650 rated player. And we get into the final game of the tournament, which I will spoil it for you. If we win this game, we win the tournament. That's just how it went. My opponent is 1950 ELO FIDE, which I did not know at the time. I thought that they were a lot lower rated. So we go into this game. I need a win. I was actually studying the English because I thought my opponent played the English. They did not. They played knight f3. So I just get into a d5, d4, d5 structure, shocker, and we get basically a queen's gambit declined. So I play e6, and funny enough, we get one of these structures again. I mean, it's ridiculous. And by the way, you'll notice that all my games against high-rated players, I did draw the black pieces, so I was a little bit unfortunate with that. I only got one 1800 with the white side, and then the rest of my high-rated games, I had to play with the black side. And, I just continued as I would the other game. I played knight d7, takes, which I was really happy about that he took in the center. I was like, wow, this really opens up the game for me. He castled, I castled, and then he played bishop c4. I end up trying to chase this bishop away because I tend to think that you do want to do that. But after bishop d2, I was like, I don't really want him breaking with e4. My bishop's on a kind of annoying square because, usually it wouldn't end up here because, we should be in a Catalan, but we're kind of in this exchanged Catalan that doesn't usually happen. So the bishop usually wouldn't end up here. Usually you'd be able to play rook e8 and solve this problem. So I was like, okay, let's bring the knight back. And then they played queen c2. And then I was like, okay, I really don't want them to play e4. If they play e4, I don't really see a way to win, is my problem. So if I play rook here and they play e4, I was worried that I couldn't really see a way to win, and I thought that there wasn't really any good discoveries here. Like, I just thought that if I give them the symmetricalness of this position, such a high-rated player that was playing so well, if I rely solely on the fact that this pawn is isolated, I'm not winning this game. They're not going to make any mistakes. So I really just wanted to avoid allowing e4, so I was like, okay, let's go bishop e4. If they go e4, I'm going to take here, and I'm going to win the pawn, so that's my way of defending against it. If they play a3, I'm going to take, they're going to take, and maybe I can fit in b5. That was my idea. But first, I want to stop e4. So let's go ahead and do that. I wasn't really concerned about this move too much. First of all, you can take. Second of all, I don't know, you can probably take on d4, and I think this position is fine. You get tempo with knight b6, and I thought, we're doing okay here. But they played bishop f4, trying to activate their bishop, also defending the e2 square. And now I was like, okay, b5, sure. And this is the right way to go about it. It's a weird move to play, and I'm very happy. This is probably one of the moves I'm most proud of that worked. And, we get to a decent position where we haven't allowed our opponent to do everything that they wanted, and I feel like this is kind of the way that you need to play against high-rated players. You can't give them what they want because they won't make the little mistakes that lower-rated players would make. So they play knight e5, and I take, and they take. Here, I play knight d7, which is the correct continuation, but after bishop f4, I don't really continue in the way that I should. I'm trying to stop e4 from happening. So knight b6, of course, the continuation is this. And I'm really just trying to avoid this because, it just opens up the game way too much, right? I should have played bishop e6 in this position, and now it's not so easy because, I'm taking here and I'm getting my bishop very active. If they push, this is, again, a structure that maybe they didn't exactly want. So I should have probably seen this, that I get knight c4 in this position, and, I actually am getting a kind of favorable position where maybe I'm not better, but it's certainly not easy for white to get what they want. This is what I should have gone for, but instead I play a very amateur knight f6, which I'm not happy with at all, which kind of just gave them a lot to work with. Here they play rook fe1. Here, I then play knight h5 because I had this grand idea. I probably should have just played this, but then f3 came and I didn't like knight d6 here, and knight c4. I just didn't like this at all. I guess it's fine because, you take, but I felt like this was getting drawish again, so I didn't like this idea that the engine wants you to play. And I was like, okay, let's play knight h5. Let's get weird with it. If obviously I'm threatening to take and double the pawns, so the bishop goes back, and then I was like, c4 is genius. Not really. I mean, it blocks the bishop in on every account. But the idea, it stops e4, so I guess, in that regard it does work. But my opponent comes with a4 here. A4, I kind of come up with the wrong idea here, and I completely blunder, something that I knew was going to be a blunder, but I just had a brain slip in my head. Bishop d7, just completely stupid, because after takes, you just blunder the fork. You blunder the fork with the rook and the king, and I just completely missed it. I didn't miss it. I actually did calculate it, but I don't know. I guess the pressure got to me in this game. You can actually see my time in this game. I don't know how to actually show you guys Lichess analysis. We can go here, actually. And you can see, that's my real name, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that this video. But 30 minutes to 51 minutes, I was getting a little bit low on time. So I guess the pressure just got to me and I made that blunder. But it's not over. It's never over till I say it's over. And my opponent plays rook a6, which was a very difficult move to kind of play against. And I was like, you know what? Take my rook.
take my rook. Don't look at turn the engine off. Don't even, oh shit, it still says it. Okay, don't even look at the engine. I was like, you know what? This is such a good piece. If I can somehow my only way back in this game from this point, after I've made the mistake initially, is to make the game weird. And after bishop takes d5, I move my king over, he takes, I take, and I'm like, do we really think that this game is going to be easy? Do we think it's going to be an easy conversion? No. Bishop c8, forcing the rook to go back. And then bishop b7, take my pawn. I'm going to go here and I'm going to get a mate. You know, the light squares are so weak now, how are you going to deal with it? They play d5, trying to get rid of me. So I play takes, and knight f6. And I'm like, you know what? You can have the exchange, but I'm going to win all your pawns. They should have played queen e7 here, but they played queen e5. And I'm like, okay, queen d7. What are you going to do about it? They play queen f6, takes. Threatening mate, you have to trade the queens. It looks completely losing because the engine will tell you it's almost +4 because I'm down the exchange. But I beg to differ. This bishop is stupid. It's useless. I've got my bishop that's really good. I've got a knight. I've got a rook. And all of my pawns, I've got a pass pawn on the A file. How are you going to deal with it? It's not very easy. So they play rook e7. They try to immediately kind of come for me. I know that if a5, they're going to play this. And this is a really, really gut-wrenching kind of move because you can't take with the bishop because they're going to take the pawn on the other side. So what you need to do is play a6 and be patient. And then get your bishop here and then play a5. You need to really, really be careful with the move order of things. My opponent plays bishop e3, and then I dump my pawn on a5. So I do it in 2 separate moves because now there's no chance of c4 being played because there's no bishop sitting on d2. So I advance my pawn again. They try and get their bishop into the position. I play king g8, and I'm like, okay, take my knight. Take my knight. What are these rooks going to do? These rooks are going to spend the entire game defending my a-pawn. It's not going to be easy. If you try to start attacking me, the pawn's going to run. So how do you do it? He doesn't take my pawn. He plays g4 instead, looking to undermine so he can play rook takes g7. So I'm like, okay, come and get me, h6. He again doesn't want to take my knight, so he plays h4. And I'm like, okay, now I play a4. Come and push me. So he pushes, I take, he takes, and then knight h5, boomeranging back around to defend the weak square. My opponent plays g6, trying to kind of come into the game. And I'm like, okay, take my knight. Take my knight. There is no threat on this square anymore. My knight can come back to here, so take it. So he does. G takes. And then I'm like, okay, as soon as your rook moves, I'm going to get this pawn. I'm coming for you. And you look at the evaluation. It's crawling back into my favor. If I can win this game, I win the whole tournament. And I don't know if you guys have realized or remember the time situation before. 22 minutes to 16. I'm like really coming back into this game. I've came back on evaluation very well here on the clock. Sorry. So my opponent plays okay f4. They're trying to make small improvements to the position. I'm like okay, a3. What are you going to do about my pawn? My pawn is going up the board. It is going to become a new queen if you don't do something about it. So he tries to bring his king. And I play a2. And it's still winning for white. But he tries to bring his king again. And I play bishop c4. And it's still winning for white, but it's really not clear. But now, most importantly, everything is defended. Except for this pawn, which is very difficult for him to attack. So he comes. G7 is the move that he tries to get. And his idea is that he's going to wrap around here and try to mate me on h8. That's his idea. So I play rook d8. And he goes for this idea. Well, he doesn't go for it immediately because he sees that this check is maybe annoying. And he doesn't want to deal with that. So he goes for king e4 first, but he doesn't see bishop d3 check, which forces him to come back and puts my bishop on a favorable square anyway. And after king f3, his rook is trapped in the corner of the board. It's drawn. For the first time in this game, I am not losing. Bishop e1, and the rook is permanently trapped. And, you know, if the rook starts trying to chase things around, I'm going to get my rook in, and suddenly you might lose this rook. So he plays king e2, and I go, okay, let's play rook d3. Rook d3, completely missing that he can just take my pawn here. I thought, okay, oh, this is so smart. Look at me. Look at me. He can't sacrifice because I get a queen. But he can sacrifice this way. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, if here, I just get mated. Well, okay, that's fine because, again, we were both below 10 minutes here. So just don't worry about that. Just don't even look at that. He plays rook c8, and then I can play rook g3, and I'm looking to come and collect this pawn. The pawn that he put on g7, I'm now going to come and get.
And he plays king c2, and I take. And I'm like, okay, this endgame will be winning for me. If he takes or takes, it won't be losing at least. And he needs to find king e3. If he doesn't find king e3 here, it's completely losing for white. So, rook takes, he doesn't want the trade. And then I go, okay, rook g2. And I'm going to play rook b2. And now this is defended. And now what are you doing? And he plays check, and I get my king up. And then he plays rook a8. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get my king up, king e6. He checks again, and I'm winning. For the first time in this game, I've found a way to break through, and I am winning. You need to find king d5 to sacrifice the pawn and bring the king all the way up. Not even bring the king all the way up. You need to find, what is it? Rook c2 you need to find. And I don't find it. I don't see it. I can't part ways with my pawn, so I play king f6. King f6, and I'm waiting for him to get out of the way of this rook so I can bring my king forward to g4, and I can play f5, and then my bishop will defend f5 as well. So he goes after the pawn, and I bring my king. And he goes back after the pawn, and I bring it up. And now the bishop defends, but he can check. And after he checks, I go up the board, and my idea is that I'm going to come around this way. That's how I'm going to come around and win the game. That's my idea, and you can't do anything about it. So he brings his rook back, and I bring my king back, and he checks me again, and I bring my king up, and he goes rook g7, and again, I'm winning. I'm winning for the second time. We're both down to 2 minutes in this game, and I find the best move. Rook e2 check. And then he plays king f3, and the idea is so simple. The idea is to play rook d2, and he's mated. He's completely mated. If he, moves his rook, you take the rook. If he doesn't, checkmate. And the pawn holds the escape squares, and if he does try and move over, you check and you win the rook on the other side. But I don't find it. I didn't see it. I was so worried about, I don't know what I was even worried about. I was down to 2 minutes, and I just didn't see the win. And I played rook f2 check, and he comes back, and then I offer a trade. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is winning. I thought that, if he takes here and takes here, I thought I'm winning. I thought this is what I calculated. I thought king d4, I'm going to come down here, and I'm just going to win, right? My whole idea is faster than yours. Takes, I go here, 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 here. This is what I calculated very quickly. Check. Maybe not even check. Maybe if actually, no, he has to be on that square in every line. This is what I calculated. This is what I spent my time calculating. So I played it. Rook g2, he didn't want the trade. I checked again, and again, you can kind of go back in this position and play rook e1, and you've got another win. You've got another win. If my opponent plays king g3, there's bishop e4, hitting the rook. If you take, I'm going to take. And if you play rook a7, I'm going to play bishop e1, and suddenly you can't stop me from queening because I'm going to run my king over. If you play this, I play this. You play this, I go here, or I maybe even take here, 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 and you can't stop me from queening. I'm going to queen, here, here. You can't get both the pawns. I'm going to bring this back. And that's the way that you can win this game. Again, I don't see it. I did see rook e1, but I assumed that this wasn't winning because I saw, okay, he can just take, and go here. But I just stopped calculating at bishop e1. I guess I was just too low on time. Actually, I'm at 1 minute. I'm down to 1 minute on my clock, so I just don't see the win. I play rook e3 check. My opponent starts, running down the board. I take a pawn. They take a pawn. And then I play rook c3, and I'm actually losing here because of rook b2, which is just very, very difficult, and my king is stuck, and eventually they're going to go and win my pawn. That's the idea, but my opponent is also in the same amount of time as me, so they go ahead and take the free pawn. I cannot take because of this check, so I actually wonder if I could take. Yeah, I just kind of looking at it now. He has to go back, and then I kind of just run it. Oh, you have to play bishop e6 apparently. That's crazy. But you do get a draw here as well. I play king f2 though. They bring that rook back. I stop bringing my king, and by this point I'm like, yeah, it's over. My winning chances are over. I'm probably not gonna lose this game. I kind of just keep going in this endgame. I did actually think there was a moment where I was like, hey, if they play king h6 here. Oh, sorry, it wasn't in this position. What position was it in? There was a position where I was like, oh, they could actually lose here. I can't remember what it was, but we ended up trading into a drawn endgame and agreeing to a draw. This was the longest game of the day, and I drew against this player. I had plenty of chances to win, but I think at the end of the day, considering my opening and my missteps in the opening, all of those chances in the end game I probably didn't deserve. This game probably deserved the draw, and I ended up finishing third in this tournament, where the two players that finished first, they will have to play a tiebreak to determine who wins the tournament. But I ended up finishing first in what I think was an okay tournament. It's one of those tournaments where I'm kind of glad, I guess. In a way, I'm glad that I had some things that I could work on. Like, it wasn't one of those tournaments where I just got blown out of the park and I had no chances of winning in the games that I was losing. It's kind of one of those tournaments where I can at least kind of pinpoint things that I did wrong and improve my chess off the back of it. You know, I would hate to play really good in all of these games and then and you know, in the games that I lost, I just had no chances, right? I'm glad that in the games that I did lose, it's because of something I did and not because my opponent was just, you know, light years better than me, which is, I guess, the silver lining in this case at least. But yeah, if you guys want to see the Lee Chess study with all of the games, we did skip through some. I thought it would be a very long video and a very boring video if we went through games against unrated players or you know, 1500s. I thought that was not so interesting. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of the video. Hopefully next time I make a video like this, I'll have like a camera and I'll record some of the games and the production will be a lot higher. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys were actually interested in a tournament like this or a video like this before I kind of put a whole bunch of effort into, you know, setting things up, especially, you know, when recording chess games at tournaments is in a way inconveniencing other people. Other people will be on camera and, you know, I don't want to do that if, you know, you guys don't even want to see the videos that much. I don't want to cause that inconvenience on people. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. If you guys would like to see more tournaments like this, certainly let me know. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Hopefully more tournaments to come, regardless of if I make them into YouTube videos or not. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one.